Before this month comes to an end, there is a message placed on your heart for a reason. You may have faced delays, disappointments, unanswered prayers, or moments of uncertainty, but God has not forgotten you. What seems like an ordinary season may actually be the preparation for an extraordinary blessing. Right now, God is calling you to open your heart and receive the one thing that can change everything. Stay with this message, because what you are about to hear could be exactly what your spirit needs before this month ends. God wants you to receive divine peace before this month ends, because peace is the foundation upon which every other blessing can stand. Many people spend their days chasing answers, searching for signs, and waiting for circumstances to change before they allow themselves to feel calm. But God's peace does not depend on what is happening around you. It comes from knowing that He remains in control even when life feels uncertain. If you have been carrying stress, anxiety, confusion, or emotional exhaustion, this message is for you. The battles you have faced this month may have left you feeling drained. You may have prayed for solutions that have not appeared yet. You may have hoped for doors to open, only to watch them remain closed. You may have expected support from people who failed to show up when you needed them most. Through all of this, God has been watching, guiding, and sustaining you, even when you could not see His hand at work. There is a reason why peace is so powerful. When fear dominates your thoughts, it becomes difficult to recognize opportunities. When worry fills your mind, it becomes harder to hear God's direction. When anxiety takes control, it can convince you that the future holds nothing but problems. God understands this, which is why He wants to place peace in your heart before anything else. Peace clears the noise. Peace restores perspective. Peace allows you to move forward without being controlled by every chance that appears in front of you. Perhaps this month has tested your patience in ways you never expected. Maybe financial pressures have weighed heavily on your mind. Maybe relationship struggles have caused sleepless nights. Maybe you have been fighting private battles that no one else knows about. It is easy to believe that peace can only come after those situations are resolved. Yet God's peace often arrives before the breakthrough. It arrives before the answer. It arrives before the miracle. It arrives while the storm is still present, giving you the strength to stand firm while everything around you seems unstable. Think about how many times you have survived situations that once looked impossible. There were moments when you thought you would never recover emotionally, financially, or spiritually. Yet somehow, God carried you through. The same God who sustained you then is sustaining you now. The same God who opened doors before can open them again. The same God who provided in previous seasons remains faithful today. His character does not change because your circumstances change. His promises do not disappear because your timeline looks different than expected. The enemy often tries to convince people that worry is productive. It whispers that constant fear somehow protects them from disappointment. But worry cannot solve tomorrow's problems. Fear cannot create tomorrow's opportunities. Anxiety cannot produce tomorrow's blessings. These burdens only steal today's strength. God is inviting you to release what you were never meant to carry. He is asking you to surrender the pressure of controlling every outcome. He is asking you to trust that He is working behind the scenes, arranging details you cannot yet see. As this month approaches its final days, God is not asking you to have every answer. He is not demanding perfect understanding. He is not expecting you to know exactly how everything will unfold. He is simply calling you to receive the peace that comes from trusting Him completely, a peace that remains steady when plans change, a peace that remains strong when uncertainty rises, a peace that quiets restless thoughts and reminds you that your future is still in His hands, a peace that allows you to wake up each morning with confidence instead of fear, expectation instead of doubt, and hope instead of discouragement, and instead fills your spirit with a quiet assurance that does not depend on visible proof. And even then, there is something deeper happening behind what you can currently understand. Because what you have been calling delay is not abandonment, and what you have been labeling as silence is not rejection. It is preparation taking place in unseen ways, shaping outcomes that require time, shaping strength that cannot be rushed, shaping character that must be formed before the blessing arrives. The delay you have experienced this month is not random, and it is not punishment. It is alignment happening in disegy. UEC, because there are blessings that do not just require desire, they require readiness, and readiness is often built through waiting, through pressure, through moments when nothing seems to move forward, even when you are doing everything you know how to do. And in those moments, God is not inactive. He is working on layers within you that you cannot see, but will eventually recognize. When everything begins to make sense, you may have thought certain doors should have opened by now. You may have believed certain prayers should already have been answered. You may have assumed timelines that did not match what actually unfolded. But what feels like delay is often divine protection from outcomes you were not yet prepared to carry. Because not every open door leads to life, not every quick answer leads to peace, and not every immediate result leads to lasting stability. So sometimes God slows things down, not to deny you, but to develop you. There are blessings that require maturity to sustain. Because receiving something is one thing, but keeping it, managing it, and walking in it without losing yourself is something entirely different, and the delay you have been frustrated with may actually be saving you from losing something you once prayed for too early, before your hands were strong enough to hold it, before your mind was stable enough to manage it, before your spirit was grounded enough to protect it in this season. God has been building endurance inside you, even when you felt like nothing was happening. Even when your prayers felt unanswered, even when your expectations were repeatedly stretched, because endurance is what allows a person to stand firm when the blessing finally arrives and opposition begins to rise. Endurance is what keeps you steady when sudden changes come. Endurance is what allows you to remain faithful when the weight of responsibility increases beyond what you once imagined. What you called waiting was actually training. What you called NC was actually instruction without words. What you called delay was actually God rearranging timing, aligning connections, removing what would have blocked you later, and preparing what must be in place for your next level, because every blessing has a structure around it, and when one part is not ready, the entire experience would collapse under pressure. You have been in a process where unseen things are being positioned in your favor, where unseen battles are being handled without your awareness, where unseen protection has been surrounding decisions you thought were purely delayed, and in reality you were being guarded from outcomes that would have overwhelmed you in ways you could not yet handle emotionally or spiritually. Even the discomfort you felt was part of shaping. Because growth rarely feels comfortable while it is happening, and transformation often feels like confusion before it becomes clarity. But nothing in this process has been wasted, not a single prayer, not a soul. Not a single moment of waiting without answers, because everything has been contributing to a version of you that is being prepared for something greater than what you originally expected. And now, as you move deeper into this message, you begin to realize that the same process that was shaping you through delay is also actively removing what has been quietly blocking your confidence, because one of the greatest battles you face in this season is not outside of you, but within your thoughts, where fear tries to speak louder than faith and uncertainty tries to dominate the space. Where trust is meant to grow, fear has a way of disguising itself as logic. It tells you to prepare for the worst. It convinces you that disappointment is more likely than breakthrough. It makes you rehearse negative outcomes before they ever happen, and slowly it begins to drain your expectation from the future God is preparing. But God is stepping into that inner space right now, not to your fear, but to replace it, not to shame your anxiety, but to heal it, not to ignore your worry, but to transform it into something higher. There are moments in life when fear becomes so familiar that it starts to feel normal. And when fear feels normal, faith feels distant. But God is breaking that cycle in this very season, because He cannot build a future inside a mind that is constantly collapsing under pressure. And He cannot release greater responsibility into a heart that is still controlled by what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. So He begins by clearing the internal noise before He changes external situations. You may have noticed how certain thoughts repeat themselves when you are alone, how doubt becomes louder at night, how concerns about tomorrow feel heavier when you are not distracted. And those are the exact spaces where God is now working, because transformation is not only about changing circumstances, it is about renewing perception, it is about shifting how you see. What you are going through, it is about teaching your heart to respond differently to pressure. Faith does not always remove the storm immediately, but it changes how you stand inside it. Faith does not always explain everything at once, but it gives you the strength to keep moving even without full understanding. And God is replacing the fragile, collapsing nature of fear with a steady internal confidence that does not depend on external confirmation, but depends on his unchanging presence. You are being taught to trust again in areas where disappointment once created hesitation. You are being strengthened again in places where previous experiences created hesitation. And you are being restored in your expectation so that you no longer approach life with caution shaped by pain, but with courage shaped by promise, because God does not want you to live your future through the lens of your past. There is a shift happening in your inner world where fear is losing authority, where negative assumptions are losing control, where limiting beliefs are being challenged by a deeper truth that God is still in charge, even when nothing seems predictable. And this truth is not just information, it is becoming a foundation inside you, something that holds you steady when emotions fluctuate and situations change. Faith begins to grow in places where fear once dominated, not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because your awareness of God's presence becomes stronger than your awareness of problems. And as that awareness increases, your reaction to difficulty begins to change, your interpretation of delay begins to change, your response to uncertainty begins to change. Even now, you may still feel traces of fear trying to return, but they are no longer the final voice. They are no longer the strongest influence. They are no longer the decision maker in your life, because something deeper is being established within you. A quiet but powerful assurance that you are not walking alone, that you are not abandoned in your process, that what God started in your life is still unfolding even when you cannot track every detail of it. That assurance begins to shape how you see every struggle you are currently facing, because what once felt like the end of your strength is now being revealed as the beginning of your resilience. And what once looked like failure is slowly being reinterpreted as formation, because God does not measure your life by isolated moments of pressure. He measures it by the full unfolding of what he is building through those moments. Your current struggles are not the conclusion of your journey. They are chapters within a larger process that you cannot fully read while you are still inside them. And this is why confusion often accompanies growth, because you are experiencing pieces of a story that has not yet revealed its final structure. And when you only see fragments, it is easy to assume something is breaking, when in reality, something is being built with precision and purpose. There are days when the weight of your circumstances feels heavier than your ability to respond, when responsibilities feel larger than your strength, when emotions feel harder to manage than usual, and in those very moments it becomes easy to believe that you are reaching your limit. But what you interpret as a limit is often a threshold, a point where old versions of you are being stretched beyond comfort so that a stronger version can emerge through pressure. God does not waste struggle. He does not ignore pain, and he does not overlook tears that were shed in silence. Instead, he uses every moment you thought you were breaking as part of a deeper construction within your character, because stability is not built in comfort. It is built in tension. It is built in pressure. It is built in seasons where nothing feels easy, but everything is shaping something inside you that cannot be formed any other way. You may have been tempted to believe that because things are hard right now, they are not meant for you. But difficulty is not always a sign of wrong direction. Sometimes it is a sign of significant development, because anything that carries purpose will also carry resistance, and anything that carries destiny will also pass through seasons of testing before it can fully manifest in your life. Even your emotional responses are part of this process. The moments when you feel overwhelmed, the moments when you feel uncertain, the moments when you question whether you are progressing or not, all of these are not signs of abandonment. They are signs that you are still in motion, still being shaped, still being positioned in ways that are not yet visible but deeply intentional. There is a quiet work happening in your life right now that does not always show external results immediately, because transformation often begins internally before it becomes visible externally. And while you may not see immediate changes in your situation, You are being changed in how you endure it, how you interpret it, how you respond to it, and that internal change is preparing you for external shifts that will require a different level of strength. What feels like repetition in your struggles is actually refinement. Because each time you face pressure again, you are not the same person who faced it before. Even if the situation looks similar, your capacity has been increasing quietly, your awareness has been expanding silently, your endurance has been deepening gradually. And God is using repetition not to punish you, but to prepare you for consistency in your next level. You are being trained to stand in places where weaker foundations would collapse. You are being strengthened in areas where hesitation used to control you, and you are being shaped into someone who can carry more without losing balance. Because what is coming into your life requires a version of you that is steady, not shaken by temporary pressure, not defeated by temporary resistance, not discouraged by temporary delay. Even in moments when you feel like nothing is changing, something within you is being anchored more deeply, and that anchoring is what will hold you steady when the external shifts finally begin to move faster than you expected, because the preparation you are going through now is not about immediate relief, it is about long-term stability in what is ahead. And that is why God begins to shift your attention from what is not happening yet to the deeper truth of timing. Because one of the hardest lessons in your journey is learning that divine timing does not always align with emotional urgency. And what feels late to you is never late in the eyes of the one who sees the entire picture from beginning to end. God is calling you to trust his timing completely, not partially, not conditionally, not only when it makes sense, but fully, even when it challenges your understanding, because trust is not proven in moments of clarity. T is proven in moments of uncertainty, when you choose to remain steady without visible confirmation, when you choose to believe without immediate evidence, when you choose to stay aligned even when your expectations are not being met in the way you imagined. There are seasons where everything inside you wants to accelerate the process, where impatience begins to rise, where comparison begins to whisper that others are moving faster, achieving sooner, receiving earlier, and in those moments your inner world is tested, not by what you see, but by how you interpret what you see, because comparison distorts timing, and distortion creates unnecessary pressure that was never meant to shape your identity. God is gently pulling you away from that pressure by reminding you that timing is not a competition, it is alignment, and alignment requires precision, because if something arrives before you are ready, it can overwhelm you, and if something arrives after you are prepared, it can frustrate you. But when it arrives exactly when you are formed for it, it becomes a source of stability rather than struggle. You may have felt moments where you questioned why certain doors have not opened yet, why certain answers have not arrived yet, why certain changes have not manifested yet, and in those questions there is a hidden tension between your desire for control and God's invitation for trust. Because trust requires releasing the need to predict every outcome and instead resting in the assurance that nothing is delayed outside of divine awareness. There is a deeper intelligence behind your waiting that you cannot fully see from your current position, because timing is not just about events happening at the right moment, it is also about inner development reaching the right stage, and sometimes the external delay is synchronized with internal preparation that is still unfolding. Even when it feels invisible to you, God is working on both sides of your life simultaneously, the visible and the invisible, the external circumstances and the internal readiness, and both must align before certain breakthroughs can fully take shape, because without internal alignment, external blessings become unstable, and without external alignment, internal growth feels incomplete. So timing ensures that both dimensions meet at the right intersection. You are being taught to release the urge to rush what God is refining. Because rushing often leads to premature decisions, and premature decisions often lead to unnecessary cycles of frustration. But when you learn to trust timing, you begin to step into a flow where peace replaces pressure, where patience replaces panic, and where clarity replaces confusion. Even in moments where nothing seems to be changing around you, something is being ordered beneath the surface. Connections are being positioned, paths are being adjusted, obstacles are being removed in ways you cannot yet trace, and what looks like stillness is actually preparation. Moving with precision beyond human perception, there is a maturity being formed in you through this process, a maturity that no shortcut could have produced, because timing is not only about when things happen, it is about who you become while waiting for them, and God is shaping that identity in ways that ensure you will not only receive what is coming, but also be able to sustain it without losing balance. Trusting His timing means releasing the anxiety of trying to force outcomes and instead developing the confidence that what belongs to you will not miss you. What is assigned to you will not be lost, and what is prepared for you will arrive with exact alignment, even if every previous moment felt uncertain or delayed beyond expectation. And as you step deeper into this truth, you begin to realize that what you truly needed in this season was never just an outcome, but a divine release that has already been in motion, because God is not only preparing what is coming toward you, He is also already positioning it to reach you at the right moment, in the right form, and with the right purpose attached to it. The one thing God is releasing into your life is not always something external first. It is often something spiritual before it becomes physical, something internal before it becomes visible. And this release begins with clarity that replaces confusion, peace that replaces pressure, and strength that replaces exhaustion, because without inner transformation, external blessings would feel overwhelming instead of empowering. You may have been expecting God to move in one specific direction, through one specific door, in one specific way, but divine release does not always follow human expectation, because God is not limited to the pathways you can imagine, and what He is preparing for you may come through routes you never considered, through timing you did not predict, and through situations that initially seemed unrelated to your request. There is a relative ease happening where things that were once stuck begin to loosen, where what felt blocked begins to shift, and where what felt delayed begins to align, not always suddenly, but steadily, not always loudly, but clearly. Because divine movement often starts quietly before it becomes undeniable in your life. God is releasing burdens that you were never meant to carry into the next phase. Thoughts that have weighed you down, fears that have slowed your progress, expectations that have created unnecessary pressure, and emotional heaviness that has been clouding your ability to see clearly. Because before new blessings can be fully embraced, old weights must first be released. There are also hidden doors being prepared for you, doors that do not rely on human permission alone, doors that open through divine orchestration, where circumstances align in ways that you cannot manufacture or force. And these doors are connected to timing, readiness, and purpose, not just desire, which means what being released is carefully matched to who you are becoming, not just what you want in this release. God is also restoring things that were lost in previous seasons, not always in the exact form you remember, but in a way that carries greater meaning, greater stability, and greater alignment with where you are headed now. Because restoration is not about returning to the past, it is about rebuilding something stronger than what was broken. You are entering a phase where mental clarity begins to return, where confusion starts to lift, where emotional heaviness begins to decrease, and where direction that once felt unclear slowly becomes more defined. And this clarity is part of the release itself, because God does not only change circumstances, He changes perception so that you can recognize what He is doing when it begins to unfold. Even opportunities that once seemed out of reach are being positioned in ways that will soon become accessible, not because you forced them, but because alignment has been shifting behind the scenes, and what once felt distant is now being brought closer through processes you cannot fully trace, but will eventually understand. This release is not random, it is intentional, it is structured, and it is tied to a greater purpose that extends beyond this moment, because God does not release things just to satisfy desire. He releases them to fulfill destiny, and everything being prepared for you carries a purpose that is bigger than your current understanding. As this release continues, you will begin to notice subtle changes in how you think, how you respond, and how you interpret your journey, because when God releases something significant into a life, it first reshapes the inner world before the outer world fully reflects it, preparing you to walk into what has already been assigned to you with confidence and stability. And that is where the final shift of this message begins to settle inside your spirit, because what God is calling you into now is not just a moment of receiving, but a moment of response, where gratitude becomes your posture, expectation becomes your mindset, and faith becomes your daily way of standing in what has not fully manifested yet, but is already in motion. Receive this gift with gratitude and expectation, not as a casual thought, but as a deep internal agreement that what God has spoken over your life is still active, still unfolding, and still moving toward fulfillment, even if the visible evidence has not fully caught up yet, because gratitude is not dependent on completion. It is rooted in trust, and expectation is not denial of reality. It is alignment with a higher reality that is already at work. There is a shift that happens when you begin to truly receive with gratitude, because gratitude changes how you interpret your present. It removes the weight of constant dissatisfaction. It breaks the cycle of always feeling behind, and it opens your awareness to recognize small signs of progress that were previously overlooked while you were focused only on what had not changed yet. Expectation, when guided by faith, becomes a powerful force that shapes how you move through your days, because what you expect internally often determines how you respond externally. And when expectation is rooted in God's promises rather than temporary circumstances, it creates stability even in uncertain environments, allowing you to remain grounded while everything around you is still developing. God is calling you to shift from anxious waiting into peaceful anticipation, where you are no longer trying to force outcomes, but are instead positioned in trust, where you are no longer overwhelmed by delays, but are instead strengthened by assurance, where you are no longer defined by what has not happened yet, but are instead anchored in what is already being prepared beyond your sight. There is a maturity in this kind of receiving, because it requires you to release control, release time lines, release comparisons, and release the pressure of trying to understand every detail before it unfolds, and instead step into a posture that says, even if I cannot see everything yet, I still believe that everything is being aligned for my good. In this final moment of the message, God is also refining your emotional response to waiting, so that disappointment no longer dominates your expectations, so that delay no longer defines your confidence, and so that uncertainty no longer dictates your peace, because what He is building inside you is a steadiness that remains firm, regardless of external fluctuations. You are being invited into a deeper level of trust, where your faith is not dependent on immediate results, but on a consistent awareness that God is actively involved in every detail of your journey, even in the parts that feel quiet, even in the parts that feel unclear, even in the parts that feel unfinished. This is where expectation becomes powerful again, not as anxious desire, but as calm assurance, where your spirit begins to settle into the truth that nothing is random, nothing is wasted, and nothing is forgotten in the process you are currently walking through. As you hold this message inside you, you begin to carry a different energy into your life, one that is no longer driven by panic or pressure, but by faith-filled anticipation, where every new day is seen as another step closer to what has already been prepared for you. And that shift alone begins to change how you walk, how you think, and how you believe moving forward.